I didn't show myself mixing this because it was kind of an experiment. Like I had a giant bag of cacao powder that I needed to use up, but it was going to take a lot of peanut butter banana smoothies to get through that. However, I saw someone on TikTok making a chocolate sourdough and was like, yeah, let's just put it in bread. And if you saw the previous video where I gave a tutorial for creating your own starter and making sourdough, this is what I meant by just bringing the dough together into a ball for pre-shaping. Here, I'm not doing any fancy folding, just a couple coil folds and then a couple of push and pulls to create a tense ball. This time I'm showing why I flip the dough over before I let it sit for that 20 to 30 minutes, because if I wait, then when I come back to it, the dough has had time to relax and spread out. So it just makes it a little kind of clunky or messy to flip it over, and you risk messing up the smooth outer layer that you created during the pre-shaping. Probably not even that important, but it makes sense to me because it's not typical practice for you to just do something that makes your life harder. And if you do, you might want to talk to somebody about that. This was also my first attempt at making an oval loaf instead of a round one, but I didn't have a banneton that shape, so I'm using a loaf pan. Remember, you don't need fancy accessories to make bread, so if you have something similar, that's good enough. Don't have a dough whisk? Use a fork. Don't have a banneton? Use a bowl. Don't have a lamb? Use a knife. And I just lined it with a tea towel, which is an important step because in general, dough can get kind of damp in the fridge. Especially happens when you're making sweet loaves because the sugars can start to leak out. So you want something that's gonna wick away the extra moisture or syrup. So for that reason, I'm also using regular flour in addition to the rice flour. My loaves never used to grow this much during cold fermentation, but it doesn't seem to be like negatively affecting it, so I'm gonna just take that as a sign that nothing's wrong with it. And this is how you know I'm hyperfixating, because the first thing I did this morning was bake this loaf instead of actually eating something or even probably drinking water. But it's moments like this that I appreciate my past self for thinking ahead, because this seldom happens, but when it does, I know it's gonna be a good day. All I gotta do is toast up this breakfast burrito that I prepped the day before, along with some red onions that I also pickled in advance. As you can see, I had a lot of starter to use up because again, I don't discard. If I feed, then I bake. And if I'm not gonna bake, then I don't feed, in which you can keep it in the refrigerator. So I'm gonna make more bread because I actually split that chocolate loaf with my family. And of course, I gotta make bagels. But apparently, I just refuse to accept the fact that this brilliant of a color will not transfer to bread. So now I'm using actual dragon fruit instead of powder because I live a life of delusion, okay? I knew this was not going to work, but I just wanted to see for myself, you know? Like that way I could say I tried. But even though this was a fail for making pink bread, it was a success for making delicious seeded bread. Because arguably, I think this might be my best loaf. And I think it's in part that I'm just like proud that it turned out well because I completely formulated the recipe myself. Like up until recently, I just did not understand baking ratios, but I finally figured it out. And this is the fruit of my labor, literally, fruit bread. And since y'all been asking for a cookbook for like the longest, I figured the least I can do is give y'all some ideas in the newsletter. So if you're signed up, you actually already received this recipe and the cinnamon raisin bagels, I think in the beginning of last week. And I have a few more drafts ready to go, but I'm also contemplating maybe just go ahead and making the ebook because one, you asked for it, and because two, Squarespace does have a ton of options for sales. Like it could be digital content that you can download or like membership exclusive videos where I would say make the recipe step by step so that you can follow along with me. They even have online courses for those who offer detailed programs that need to be outlined over like a period of time. For example, if you're like a personal trainer or fitness provider, and of course, general e-commerce, like if you have tangible items, including your own custom merch, which Squarespace will actually produce and even ship for you. And like any good online tool, they offer analytics so that you can get additional information on engagement and how to better serve your clients or your community. So if you're looking to diversify, they've got all the options. All you have to do is go to www.squarespace.com/abetweene or use my code abetweene for 10% off. Since this loaf was an experiment, I also made it pretty small, but this is a really good size in my opinion if you live alone or you just don't eat bread on a daily basis. But remember, you can freeze these because that's exactly what I did with this one. I didn't eat this for at least another week because I still had the purple sweet potato pink loaf. Not shown, I also prepped some pandan pudding, which I made before in an old episode. I will link that down below. And this time I paired it with pineberries. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but the one thing I hate about being plant-based is I actually love cheese. Like, yes, there are many vegan options on the market, some of which are actually tasty in their own right, but you cannot compete where you don't compare. Like, they may curb a craving, but they ain't fooling nobody. And for some reason, cream cheese just seems to be the worst of them. I can't find anything in store that comes even remotely close. So flavoring them is a must, and today's menu is vanilla bean. Normally, I would prefer savory over sweet, but since we got cinnamon raisin, we just gonna lean in. If you prefer a knife for spreads, how does it feel to be on the wrong side of history? Clearly, I am Team Spoon. And there is just simply no denying that this level of condiment control is undefeated. Like, my logic is undeniable. Don't worry, there's still time to cross over. The only thing that could possibly top this is an offset spatula. But I don't know, even that's debatable. Like, unless you're a full-blown chef or baker, who just buys those at will? But perhaps I should just get one, just to test this theory. The first time I made the chocolate sourdough, I actually forgot to add the chocolate chips like I intended to. So that was the perfect excuse for me to make another one. A win is a win, because now I can walk you through it. Before we even mix the dough, we're going to bloom the chocolate, which is just hydrating the powder with a warm to hot liquid to bring out the flavor. And while you can just use water, I'm going to use coffee. And for the record, this is separate, as in if you know anything about baking percentages, normally the liquid that you add to the flour contributes to the final calculation. However, this liquid doesn't count because it is only hydrating the chocolate. Therefore, it won't affect the liquid to flour ratio for the bread, and you'll see why in a little bit. I know I'm not an avid coffee drinker, but I do actually enjoy this Vietnamese coffee when I can actually stand the smell of coffee, because this is so strong. But anyway, I saw these in the store and I was like, why not? Normally, I also wouldn't go for single-use packaging, but again, y'all know how I am with coffee. And if you don't know, basically, I don't drink it. It's only for special occasions. So the fact that these are wrapped individually actually does make more sense for my lifestyle, because I'm not going to get to it for a while. So at the very least, it'll help with the freshness. So now the liquid has married with the chocolate, therefore it no longer identifies as water. Also, by the way, this recipe generally calls for Dutch processed cocoa. Apparently, it's supposed to make the flavor richer. I'm using what I got though. If you've tried both though, please let me know your thoughts. Would love to know if I should just go ahead and make that investment. Go ahead and threaten me with a good time. Shopping has always been my kryptonite. If you saw me making the blueberry bagels, you know I've been struggling to get the dough to the consistency that I like it at and not really sticky. So I tried adding dried blueberries instead of fresh or frozen. Also, after the dough is already mixed. But unfortunately, I didn't actually taste these because in addition to the bread, I also gifted the bagels too. It's okay, we'll try again. But I was really happy with how these turned out, especially the color. Oh, they were so pretty. If you were wondering what this was, I decided to make some burger buns because I found some black bean burgers in the freezer. I wanted to lean into the Mexican flavors, but I didn't think that blue corn masa would achieve the texture that I was looking for. Like, I didn't want to make cornbread, I wanted to make soft burger buns. Therefore, I settled for adding blue spirulina.